on Elon Local News.
Everybody should look at that student code of conduct and say, this is what will happen to me, because it will happen. It will happen because we are going to be watching.
Major changes to campus life as the coronavirus pandemic forms a new reality for students, faculty, and staff.
Keeping yourself safe, what you need to know to decrease your chances of exposure to COVID-19.
And a modified tradition, what convocation looked like for the class of 2024.
Things around campus may look different.
But Elon Local News will still be here for you.
Today, Monday, August 17th.
Elon Local News starts right now.
Live from the Jane and Brian Williams studio at Elon University School of Communications, you're watching Elon Local News.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the first Elon Local News of the academic year. I'm Maeve Ashbrook.
And I'm Brian Ray. Our show will look a little different this semester. As you can see, Maeve and I are not at the desk together, so we can stay physically distant.
But we begin tonight with breaking news.
The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill just announced undergraduate learning will be fully remote this fall because of an influx of coronavirus cases. There were 4 clusters of cases, 3 in residence halls, the other in a fraternity. According to the Daily Tar Heel, UNC reported 135 new positive cases last week and just began classes last Monday. The rate of positive COVID-19 tests at the university has increased by more than 10% to 13.6 since last week.
Even with the announcement from UNC today, some relatively good news from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. Today it reported the lowest number of newly reported coronavirus cases since late May. Today the department reported 500 new cases in the state. Alamance County also reported the lowest number of new cases, 14, in more than a month. Today there are 0 new cases on campus here at Elon University.
But it should be noted that the number of coronavirus tests being conducted in the state has slowly fallen in recent days. There's been a total of 11 coronavirus cases on campus at Elon, more than 2,600 cases in Alamance County, and more than 145,000 across the state. For the latest numbers anytime, all the time, visit elonnewsnetwork.com/coronavirus.
Despite these numbers, over 1,600 students in the class of 2024 moved into Elon this weekend. Our Ellis Chandler spoke with some first-year students and joins us now live under the Oaks. Ellis?
Thanks, Brian and Maeve. It wasn't too long ago that I was sitting under the Oaks for convocation. Usually the space behind me is filled with chairs, families, and freshmen. But this morning, the class of 2024 met in their orientation groups around campus to watch the Elon tradition. I spoke with Elon freshman Michaela Buzio, who says she wishes she could have attended the ceremony outside.
Just from what I've heard, it's seems like a really special moment in our college career, and it stinks that we have to miss it, but it's all right. Health comes first.
665. I also spoke with freshman Malik Griffin, who says he thinks the ceremony was still a good experience despite the different setup.
Let me know when to do the out. Okay, back to you in the studio. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
To watch the full live stream of convocation, visit elonnewsnetwork.com. Live under the Oaks, I'm Ellis Chandler. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Ellis. Throwing a party is part of a normal college experience for some, but this semester the Office of Student Conduct says that may get you suspended. Director of Student Conduct Jenny Spangenberg told Elon News Network in an email that students who host gatherings in violation of the state's executive order, which says 10 people indoors and 25 people outdoors, will face suspension from the university, removal from university housing, and interim restriction from campus. Students attending such gatherings will face a minimum disciplinary probation. President Connie Book says it's up to the students to know the consequences.
Everybody should look at that student code of conduct and say, this is what will happen to me, because it will happen. It will happen because we are going to be watching.
Town of Elon Police and Elon Campus Police did not respond to a comment on what their department's communication with university administrators will look like. Health and Finances are just two of the reasons
some it's decided not to take. are just not two reasons that students did not decide to take classes in person this fall. Our Margaret Faust spoke to students about their concerns returning to campus and why they're taking classes remotely.
Even if I get it and say I'm asymptomatic the whole time, I could pass it on to someone who could then die from it. And that possibility is horrifying to me, and I don't think really anything is worth it.
Elon senior Megan Knorr struggles with asthma and anxiety and didn't want to be responsible for transmitting coronavirus. When the option for remote learning became available, Knorr applied for the option through Disability Services.
The risk to my health, to the health of the people around me, isn't worth it.
While Knorr won't be taking classes in person, she will still be on campus, living in her Parks Place apartment with 2 roommates.
Whatever one of us is exposed to exposes the rest of us as well, because we're living in a small apartment.
But she says the risk is worth it.
I live with my 2 best friends, and that's like a really important part of my mental health, is still having some semblance of a social life, even if it's, mostly contained within our apartment.
Knorr was able to keep her housing on Elon's campus because she's conducting undergraduate research. Junior Sophie Jordan will be taking classes from her home state of New Hampshire for financial reasons.
We could have another shutdown. It could be very hard for me to find a job, and I have a rent that I'm paying in North Carolina. And that kind of scared me a little bit.
But that wasn't all that was frightening for Jordan. She also has concerns with students.
As much as Elon is taking the precautions to socially distance, I just don't know how that's going to go with the student body.
Knorr believes more can be done to have a safer semester.
We don't have to be doing it this way. Plenty of other universities, peer universities, have gone either fully online or to hybrid classes.
Both Knorr and Jordan hope they can make the most of their semester, even if it's from a distanced classroom. Margaret Faust, Elon Local News.
According to Disability Resources and Student Care and Outreach, 170 students have been approved for remote learning. If you're registered with Disability Resources, there is no deadline to apply for online learning. And while some students have opted for online learning, 23 students have deferred until spring 2021, and 33 have deferred until next fall. For freshman Mara Wachkovich, the pandemic gave her more reason to take a gap year, something she was already considering.
I think it's like the perfect time in your life, kind of, because you're not like a college graduate, so you're not totally like, I'm still younger, so I'm not like needing like to get a job like full time.
Washkovich will spend her time working at a family camp
and crafts.
Stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, and social distance. That's the message from University physician Dr. Jeanette Archinal and what you can do to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. I spoke with Dr. Archinal about other ways to limit exposure from the classroom to off campus.
Are you comfortable with me taking off my mask?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that's what we need to do. We know that COVID-19 is spread mostly through respiratory droplets. So that means stuff you breathe out your mouth, stuff you breathe out your nose.
Dr. Archinal says wearing a mask is the single most important thing to protect yourself and others from getting the virus.
My personal philosophy has been for the last few months, assume I have COVID, assume everybody else has COVID, wear a mask.
Respiratory droplets can also live on surfaces, meaning there's a few extra precautions you can take.
When you walk into class now, you'll see the desks are 6 feet apart, but before you sit down,
use hand sanitizer. Wipe down your chair and desk.
And always keep your mask on.
When you venture off campus for errands, Dr. Archinal says to wear your mask, use hand sanitizer, and limit contact if you can, like doing a drive-up order at Target instead of going in. If you're visiting a downtown restaurant,
eating outdoors is always better than indoors, just because you've got more air circulating. But there's no reason not to eat indoors. I've been doing it over the last month or two.
Dr. Archinal says you can still go to your favorite places and have fun as long as you're being careful.
And we're not all going to be able to be here in person if we're careless, if we're selfish, if for some reason we think we're special and don't have to follow the rules.
Dr. Archinal says the biggest risk is being in crowds without a mask. According to the CDC, being closer than 6 feet to someone for 15 minutes or more without a mask puts you at risk for getting the virus. Dr. Archinal also says it's important to remember that up to 40% of people will be asymptomatic when they test positive for COVID-19. So even if you think you feel well, you should still follow all the guidelines. Coming up, how professors are feeling about going back into the classroom amid the coronavirus pandemic.
With classes starting on Wednesday and students socializing on and off campus without distancing, some professors are worried about going back to the classroom. Others are trying to stay optimistic. Associate Professor of Strategic Communications Jessalyn Strauss says she is not surprised that there are parties already, and the university shouldn't be either. Strauss is holding hybrid classes this fall and hopes to protect herself and the students.
I don't think it's fair to put college-age students in a place where they have to make important life and death decisions. Life and death decisions should be the purview of like the 30s and above. You know, I mean, just because, you know, it's not that you guys aren't capable of making good decisions at your age. It's just that it's harder.
I bet it's crazy.
Her lecturer in English, Paula Patch, will hold classes in person because she says students should be social and more aware of their surroundings. Patch worries that the Elon community's culture will change.
My biggest fear is that we're creating a culture of fear where we all are scared of each other, and that especially in the classroom, a faculty member going in scared of students, thinking they're bringing in germs based on bad behaviors, that is not setting up a good learning environment for anybody, and that's the place I don't want us to get to.
Patch is encouraging her students to file an anonymous student contact form if they feel uncomfortable with actions other students close are taking.
Elon professors are adapting to alternative methods of teaching due to guidelines established by the university. Our Anne-Marie Bonner spoke to 2 Elon professors who are taking a different approach to a traditional classroom.
As the pandemic has caused us to adapt to a new normal, Assistant Professor of English Tita Ramirez will teach her students outside this fall.
I thought it would just kind of take a load off of our minds and help us concentrate a little bit more. We have so much to think about right now.
Ramirez plans to divide her classes into smaller groups called pods, which will help promote social distancing.
I'm actually excited about the idea of having these smaller pods because I think that the vibe and the rapport is going to be really interesting and great and potentially really strong.
Not having the same technology as indoors, Ramirez says she can utilize her laptop if she needs to. She also says she is mindful of the ups and downs that come with outdoor learning, including weather.
It's going to be pleasant on some days, but it's not going to be terrible. And if it's going to be terribly unpleasant, we won't do it. We'll have a remote class that day.
Unlike Ramirez, Assistant Professor of Journalism Alex Luxinger is teaching his students remotely for personal reasons, but believes his previous connection with his students will help him in a virtual setting.
How we're going to do it. I'm not nervous about this at all. I don't think my students should be. The good thing about Elon is that it's small enough to where we know our student. Like I know all my students in one of my classes and then at least half, if not 75% in my other class. So that's super helpful. If this was
As a journalism professor, Luxinger believes students should view the pandemic as an opportunity.
We have this convergence of a pandemic, which is touching all of us in some way. And
according to the director of the university's news bureau, Owen Covington, 68 faculty members out of 576 have been approved to teach fully remote. Statistics on how many professors are teaching outside are unknown at this time. Out of the more than 7,000 students, faculty, and staff who took the LabCorp at-home kit before coming to campus, only 15 have tested positive for the coronavirus.
Our Jack Norcross has the story.
Yeah, I do think testing and the period between taking the test and when you find out your results, right, there's inherent a lag in that right now, and we don't have a spontaneous enough availability of a rapid test right now. I think, I believe the recommendation from the task force was correct in that the testing gives everyone a sense of the process of how we are tested, how that works, and it also establishes a good baseline for the incidence of the disease across our student body, which was, as you said, around the world. So I think partly it's the exercise as well as the information. It's not perfect, right, to give a test and then arrive 2 weeks later.
Well, so it's an exercise that comes with a cost, and that's the other side of the argument. What do you say to that? Why not just get on campus and begin the stratified testing?
At the end of the day, we debated it. We looked at all of the data and decided this was part of an essential reopening plan. Still, I'm actively lobbying and hoping, as much as the law allows me, to ask our federal government to cover these opening costs for the community. I'm still hopeful that that might happen. There's a bill pending on the second wave of CARES rounding that does include opening costs. I was pleased we were able to leverage our location with LabCorp so close to reduce the testing information we're going to have, because those tests are being conducted here and LabCorp will be on site for the surveillance testing. We'll get those results back within those 48 hours that we think are so critical for our response.
Moving forward, the university will conduct random stratified testing based on on-campus location and student or employee status beginning this Wednesday. Individuals selected for testing will receive an email from the chair of the Ready and Resilient Committee, Jeff Stein. University officials say this randomized testing will allow them to monitor the general presence of the virus across the campus population. In Historic, Jack Norcross, Elon Local News.
To see more of our interview with President Book, including what she sees as the biggest misconception about her and university officials, visit our website, elonnewsnetwork.com. And you will hear more from Book on race relations and on a special edition of ELN Morning, The Racial Divide, scheduled for next Thursday, August 27th at 10 a.m. And coming up, how your favorite downtown Elon bars are coping with the loss of business and strict state requirements. Elon students wanting a drink should plan on an earlier evening this fall. Statewide curfews ban selling alcohol after 11 p.m. and restaurant managers tell me while they're excited to see students back on campus, Friday nights are just going to be different.
It is frustrating. A lot of our business, especially with students, does involve that late night.
Fat Frog Assistant Manager Avery Montgomery says the restaurant is starting karaoke, live music, and trivia nights earlier.
That way it still allows for the full time. People can still all come in. It's just an earlier night.
To help combat the spread of COVID-19, Fat Frog is also not allowing customers to walk up to the bar and order. The Oak House is taking similar steps.
The bar space is not opened. People are going over to the lounge side. So a person can come in and purchase a beverage, take it over to the lounge, sit at a table, take their mask off, and enjoy the beverage at the table. But the bar per se, for hanging out, having a drink, is not open for that.
Smith also says the bar is now a grab and go. With this, he says he's not worried about the curfew since the Oak House also plans to close early anyway. He's more worried about too many people trying to come into the building and not being able to stay physically distant.
We'll just have to limit, how many people can come in and thank people for wanting to be there. Maybe try to get people to not linger, to come maybe enjoy a beverage, enjoy somebody else's company, and then move on so that other people can enjoy the space.
Montgomery and Smith both say they realize this fall presents a new set of challenges, but they're just trying to enjoy time with students while they can.
I don't know how long y'all will be here. I'd like to say you'll stay this whole semester, but Chapel Hill's proving that to be, an interesting case right now.
My hope for us is that we have a semester.
Now again, Fat Frog will still be having live music and karaoke nights, but Montgomery says microphones will be sanitized between performances. He says they are asking customers to stay at their table unless they are on stage.
Even though Elon Athletics will not have a fall season, club sports can still go on. But with new guidelines, each club sport will be required to submit a practice plan every week. There's a 25-player limit when practicing, and masks must be worn when social distancing cannot be maintained. Women's club soccer president India Kirsten says she still has a lot of questions about how practices will run.
But that I'm sure will come up in those practice plans is, okay, how are you going to be 6 feet apart? Where are people going to be standing who need to wear masks? Where are people going to be standing who don't need to wear masks? How is this accommodating those that can't wear masks? Things like that.
For more on changes to club sports, pick up a copy of this week's Pendulum on stands Wednesday. Students who want to join a club sport can sign up this Friday at the virtual organization fair. And coming up, sights and sounds of move-in weekend.
Welcome back. And Brian, you know, this weekend was a really big one, and also it held a special place in my heart personally because my little sister is a freshman and she moved in. She was one of them. I was just so excited. My whole family was here, so that held a special place in my heart. What did you think about moving? How did you feel it went?
Yeah, you know, I really do feel for the freshmen this move-in. It's a very different world we're living in, and college is a huge adjustment already on top of this. So definitely thinking of your sister and all her fellow freshmen too.
Yeah.
And that's all the news we have for you today. Thanks for joining us.
Stay up to date with COVID-19 numbers and other Elon stories on our website. We're now going to see some sights and sounds from move-in.
Energy's been great. We were so excited to get the first cars through this morning and to really get things going. And we've got a good 2 days of families, and this is basically day one of their Elon experience.
We're on a few different college chains, so we're extremely impressed with Elon's communications and precautions and everything. So we don't have any concerns.
Good. And how emotionally are you feeling today? I know this is a hard day.
I'm like a little bit all business right now, so maybe ask me tomorrow.
I'm not allowed to cry.
He's the crier. I'm made of stone, so I'm fine.